Greetings and welcome to In Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. Now, the last time that we spoke with documentary filmmaker Chas Sheppard, and this is about his work, Sounds Like Steel. He was saying, don't worry, it's coming out just now. But he joins us again just before the premiere to share more on this journey of love. Mr. Sheppard, how you do, sir?
I'm doing very, very well and very, very excited to finally be just days away from the release of the documentary.
I can imagine, because I want to say compliments of this season, but part of this is also congrats because the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and there are lots of things that we may start off but not necessarily see through to the finish line. So you
Yeah.
said you're excited. Expand on that type of excitement. Thank you.
Yeah, so, for me, this documentary originally started off with my intention to get some good recordings of Trinidad and Tobago steel pan, especially in the context of Panorama, where you get the big bands, over 100 players on the stage giving it their all. And when I arrived in Trinidad and Tobago, I had obviously started talking to more and more people in the steel pans and the pan yards, and I was thinking, wow, there's such an incredible human story here. And by the time I had finished filming Sounds Like Steel, I had well over 100 hours of footage to work with. And so I thought, this can't be just some quick 20-minute YouTube video. And so it's grown and expanded into a documentary that's over an hour long, but it's still going to be coming out for free online for anyone to watch who wants to see it. And yeah, I'm, originally was planning on releasing it maybe 2 months after I finished filming. It's been nearly a year now of, giving all of my free time to this, but it's ready.
And there are a few things that we can speak about and what, but so we'll take them in increments, not necessarily in any particular order or importance, but what are some of the things that you've learned over this time? And I say that from, okay, well, thinking it's going to be 2 months after you recorded to a little more, well, around a year. What are some of the things that, in the same way that you started off, what you started off to record, you realized that there was more than that? What are some of the lessons that you've learned over this period?
Some of the biggest ones are really about the process of finding a story within information. So when you spend a time in any environment and you're going to run into people who have unique personal stories and you're going to gain information that you're like, wow, this is really interesting to me. But there's so much there when you spend, I spent 2 months in the pan yards talking to people and learning about this stuff. And the biggest challenge was not getting all of that information, but really choosing what to leave out. Fundamentally, 99% of what I recorded cannot be in the final documentary. And it's a difficult thing, say, when you talk about the history of steel pan, it's a difficult thing to track down all of the details of the history because some of it is lost. There's a lot of misconceptions. But it becomes even more challenging when you say, I want to turn this into 5 minutes. And that's not the challenge that I thought I would face. I thought that the biggest thing would be finding the information. The information can be difficult to find, but trying to get it across in a way that is brief, but still genuine and accurate. Because, of course, within anything, when you condense information, there is the potential that you kind of bring in some misinformation or you omit something that really is important. And so, telling the story as genuinely as I can and having all of the accuracy that can be there whilst keeping it within such a tight time frame was really the big challenge. I had a 4-hour version of this documentary just a couple of months into working on it, but it took more months and months and months and months to bring it down to a state where, I don't feel like I'm wasting people's time and that you can keep people engaged throughout the whole hour of the documentary.
And you say that, and if I had a collection plate, I would put something into it and pass it and that is one of the reasons that I appreciate conversations like this, where we don't try to condense 18 and a half, 20-minute conversation into a 25-second sound clip or a minute and a half story. And even before you think of individuals having agendas, just by that condensation, trying to distill and thereby curating that someone else's story as opposed to having that person tell it, it really is a labor and something that you have to be committed to. But I also want to ask
Yeah.
though, do you think that the precedent may have changed in terms of how steel pan can be recorded through the work that you've been doing? And I asked that question because I remember somebody saying when he's conducting on stage, he said he know what he hearing. He don't know what the judge is hearing, but he know what he
Yeah.
hearing. So,
And that was the first, I mean, that was the initial thing that I set out to do. So, and I'm really proud of the steel pan recordings in this documentary. We've got there's three performances, big performances in the documentary where you get to hear the steel pan recorded as it feels to stand in front of the band. And the challenge with recording steel pan is that standing in front of the band is great, but actually, when you and I walk into a panyard, we don't just stand in front of the band. We walk around in the racks. You hear the basses and you learn the song. So by the time you are standing in front of that panorama stage, you hear more to the music than is even really there. And so the challenge is getting it across to a first time listener. And so there are things I can do in the recording where using mics in the back of the band, I bring some of that music forwards. But the other thing is giving the people the experience of being in the panyard and hearing the music repeat. And so within the documentary, you'll find that, my favorite piece of the arrangement, and I won't spoil it, but I have a favorite piece of Clarence Morris's arrangement of Hall of Fame, which is a very complex piece of the music. And I think if a new listener hears it for the first time on that panorama stage, it's lost on them. And so I actually sneak it in a couple of times in the documentary at slower speeds, and it gets faster and faster till eventually when you hear it on the stage, hopefully that means that you really engage with it in the way that enthusiasts who are coming in the panyard get to experience that music growing.
and you say that, and one of the things that leaps to my mind is Merchant Song Rocket.
Mm,
Because you've heard the song so many times, one of the things I look forward to is the way that his voice cracks. And I think it's the first verse, looking so sweet and without a partner. And you're looking forward to it. Just like there will be
yeah, yeah.
some motifs or some things in that arrangement that, hey, it coming, it coming. And like you said, as a first-time listener, it's hard to grasp everything because there's so many moving parts at that point in time. But and and I know that you said that it's days away from the premiere.
Mhm.
When is it?
It's going to be 1 p.m. on Boxing Day, Trinidad time. So that's 5 p.m. UTC. And if you're watching this abroad, you could work out your time zone from that. 5 UTC GMT and 1 p.m. Trinidad time. And the idea of it coming out on Boxing Day is really for it to be a family event. My idea is hopefully on Boxing Day, you're with your family, you're full of good food, and the one thing that could make it better is a really fun, entertaining culture documentary for people to watch all around the world. And as it comes out live, it'll be a live premiere on my YouTube channel. If you just search my name, Chas Sheppard, or Sounds Like Steel in Google or YouTube, you'll find that. And as it comes out, we'll have myself as well as some steel pan experts and some of the players in the band in the comments section to answer people's questions that they might have during or after the documentary.
And I don't want to continue now. We take a short break and come back because there's a lot I want to ask about the premiere. So I don't want you to try to compress it into 30 seconds, 45 seconds. So we are speaking with the documentary filmmaker Chas Sheppard about Sounds Like Steel, his work in progress, and is all, and we have to say is no longer in progress. We're just waiting for the premiere.
Just waiting for the premiere. I'm until that day, I'm doing every waking hours little tweaks to the sound, little tweaks to the visuals. I had a great test screening night before last in a local cinema to me, where I brought in a bunch of people who are not familiar with steel pan, because of course I've been feeding it back to the experts, feeding it back to band members, historians, to make sure everything is accurate. But one of the biggest challenges is the the presumption of knowledge that I might have and missing information. And when you put it in front of an audience who's never seen steel pan before, they come to you with questions afterwards about, how does this work, or what is this aspect, or could we be clearer on these locations? And all of that is now being fed in to make sure that, because this documentary, fundamentally for me, the reason I wanted this documentary to exist is not so much for Trinidadians who've experienced steel pan to learn more about it, although I think they definitely will. It's for people who've never experienced steel pan to have a jumping off point. Something that, even whether you've, spent all your life in a pan yard, or whether you have never even heard of steel pan, you could watch this together and both of you get something out of it, and both of you be wanting to learn more at the end.
I think it's all, and I think one of the terms that people use is world building, especially if you don't have that knowledge base, that insider. It may be insider information, or just maybe you grew up seeing it wrong the place, not knowing necessarily the intricacies, but it is not a foreign concept to you. But we continue the conversation when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are speaking with documentary filmmaker Chas Sheppard. Sounds like steel. It is on Boxing Day, 1 p.m. TT time. Don't want to miss it. So we just spoke about world building, making sure that you're not operating from a presumption of knowledge. And doing the checks and balances to fill holes, to make explanations where they were needed. But talk to me about the panel. Is it a matter of where it is you got them from? Who are some of the people that you dealt with? And what is the idea behind actually having a panel at all?
Yeah, so the panel of people that I have been using to kind of test to see whether there's this presumption of information has of course been primarily my friends. I now live in Birmingham in the UK, where there's quite a lot of Caribbean culture, but most people here still have no idea about steel pan. And so I've been using those people to bounce off throughout the documentary. But right before the release, just a couple of days ago, I took a near final version of the documentary to a cinema here in Birmingham in the UK, and invited a bunch of people who are within the kind of documentary filmmaking and content creation scene here in Birmingham, who are of backgrounds from all over the world, who have never experienced steel pan at all. And actually, sat them down, we watched the documentary, and then just chatted with them about it afterwards to establish what are the remaining questions, and what, when I told them more information, were the bits that they were like, oh, I wish I had known that at the time of watching the documentary, to integrate that. Because I'm quite lucky in that I've been explaining steel pan. I moved to the UK when I was fairly young, and so I've been explaining steel pan to my friends since I was at a young age. So I kind of know the bits that really make people excited about it. But the thing that makes people most excited about it is really seeing 100 people or more on a stage playing their hearts out, because that's what people haven't seen. People might have seen, a person playing steel pan in a cruise ship advert, or, they've heard it within other music, and that's amazing. It's a beautiful instrument no matter how it's played. But to me, the most expressive and explosive mode of steel pan has always been that panorama energy with the big bands.
I know some people actually describe it as a musical genre within itself, but describe the process of bringing those communities of practice together, please, in terms of like the pan playing community, as well as the filmmaking content creation community. And was there any trepidation? Because it's something to say, okay, well, I'm working on it and I show somebody this little piece, but then have somebody look at it, and knowing this is somebody in the field who will look at it from a dispassionate point of view versus, yes, I know that person playing. Yes, I know that song they're playing. What was that like? Take me through that process.
I was nervous, to be honest. It's something, because I've been working on it for so long, and it's largely a solo project. So it's scary when you have something you've worked on for so long to put it in front of people who, don't really know about it, who don't know you so well. But it's such an important thing. It is really, really important. And if, it's, of course, people that I respect, people who I've seen their work and I know, okay, these people, they know what they're doing, and I can really trust that the feedback that they're giving me is coming from a genuine place, right? And so, but actually, the feedback that I received is that they were really, really excited to watch it. Largely speaking, little details to fix, and that's really, made me feel a lot better about the launch itself. But I think it is important when you have, as an artist, as a creator, it is so tempting not to show everyone what you're working on because it's a very personal thing, because you're worried that their feelings on it will impact it in a way that you don't want to, and just because it's scary, you're kind of putting yourself out there for criticism. But I think no matter what field you work in, it is important to open yourself up to criticism, because that's how we get better. This is my first time doing something like this, but I can tell you it's not going to be the last. And I know, of course I've watched this more than anyone else. I'm my biggest critic here, and I know what I need to fix. But it's really important to have other people's eyes on it.
Again, what were conversations like with people who are inside this piece of work, and because they were expecting it to be okay? Well, I thought he said 2 months. Well, Chaz, everything okay? What's happening? What's happening?
Yeah. Every couple of weeks, hey Chas, how you doing? When the film coming out, and the thing for me was always a case of, I in the first couple of months I was really rushing it because I believed that this was how long this was supposed to take. I gave myself almost an arbitrary deadline of 2 months because I was like, I don't want people to be kind of like falling out of the panorama hype too much, and yeah, it should be something that I could just get out. Actually, getting involved more in the filmmaking scene and meeting other people who, when I told them I'm going to finish this in 2 months, they're like, "You're not going to finish this in 2 months. Nobody's finishing this in 2 months." And that kind of stressed me out for the first couple of months. But at a certain point, I was like, no, okay, I understand. I misjudged the timing on this, and ultimately, I'm not going to push it out until it is the best it can be. This deserves as much of my time as it takes to make this something that, one, I can be very proud of, but also that everyone that's involved in it can be very proud of, and that, all the people who are passionate about Pan can have something to show their friends, to say, look, this is what it is really all about, and be confident that it's depicting it in a way that people are going to really enjoy. And so, yeah, it's been a lot more time than I thought. I thought, 2 months, I'll polish it up. Even the last 2 months of working on it, I've still been really, really on it. And every day I actually, fortunately, was able to. I work freelance, so I was able to just not book work for December, and all of this month, every day this month has just been putting the final touches on this documentary to make it really shine.
One of the things I wonder is, was it easier or harder as you progressed? And I say that because I know that originally you reached out to individuals, just seeing what line, who would take, who would bite, in
Yeah.
terms of responding to you. And I know sometimes in this space that we're in, someone, there's the potential for some, oh, you talk to them? All right, well, keep on talking to them. Or you spoke to that person? Well, hey, I want to be on this train as well.
Yeah.
Did you have any experiences? And I don't need any specifics, but what was your experience like that?
It was actually, I'm actually very glad that when I reached out in the early days, that no one did immediately say, yeah, we want to work on this. It was all kind of like, we'll see how it's going, because it actually gave me the time for me to go into almost every panyard for the big bands in Trinidad and spend time there without telling people I was planning on filming a documentary. Just talking to people, getting to know them, making those connections, and seeing who was going to be actually really great to work with. And bands throughout Trinidad and Tobago are so different. Originally I actually wanted to film with multiple bands to show the differences, but one person trying to film multiple bands, it just ended up being virtually impossible. And the other thing was establishing for the copyright purposes. It could be very complicated to get the copyright from the original soca artist, especially who might have a label and everything. And so I was going around the panyards thinking, okay, what are they playing? Is this going to be very challenging for me? And I got incredibly lucky because I spent a lot of time filming with two bands, but the band that is ultimately in the documentary is Tropical Angel Harps, and they're playing a Mikal Teja song, Hall of Fame. And I was really worried about, getting all the copyright and everything sorted, because you just have a couple of weeks to try and convince someone to give you the song, and there's no money in the documentary. So, it could have been a real challenge, but I chatted to Mikal Teja and he said, yeah, go nuts, use the song. I was like, okay, great. And actually we ended up interviewing him after Carnival and talking about his, perspectives on the song and what he was trying to achieve with a song like Hall of Fame, which is a really introspective song as well, looking at the history of kind of Carnival and mass in Trinidad and the significance of that. So it was just a perfect match. And I think Tropical Angel Hops were not one of the bands that I reached out to initially, because they didn't have, at that time, they didn't even have an Instagram page. Um, and and so I had reached out to kind of the biggest bands, the bands that have the biggest existing kind of
Digital
presence
presence and
online.
stuff.
Yeah, because it was the easiest ones for me to find, and they were the ones that were easiest to kind of engage with and talk with online before I got to Trinidad. And if I had kind of locked in on at that point, I wouldn't have ended up working with Tropical Angel Hops, who I really think actually are the best band to tell this story, because it's a small local scene, and it's really incredibly engaged within the community of Enterprise where they're based. So yeah, I'm actually, I'm kind of glad that it did work out that way.
And I think we have a minute more, but I think one of the things that people are also looking at is the fact that you are putting your time, talent, and treasure into it. So it's easier for people to say, okay, well, yes, I can support it like
Yeah.
this. But lastly, the panel. What's the purpose of the panel?
Which panel are you talking about?
Oh, this is for the premiere, sorry.
Oh, for the premiere. So it's not going to be a panel on the premiere. It's going to be people who are involved in Steel Pan, as well as the band, as well as some historians, actually in the live chat. So when the premiere comes out, there'll be a live chat scrolling, and you can ask while the documentary is going on or right after. Ask your questions in there, and we'll come in and answer it. So the idea is that the documentary is a jumping off point. It cannot contain all information about Steel Pan, of course. And so the idea is that as people are, curious immediately after that, if kids have questions, if there's something that people missed in the documentary, you could ask in there, and there'll be members of the band, there'll be Pan historians, as well as myself, responding to those questions in real time, so that people can continue to engage even after they've finished watching the documentary.
And with that, we want to thank you so much for the work that you've done, and you've committed to continuing. Chas Sheppard,
Not a problem at
documentary
all.
filmmaker. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, I'm Dike Rostant. This has been In Depth with me. Thank you so much for joining us.